record button. So welcome everyone to our Empathy Circle. I'm Edwin Rutsch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I've been working on for about the past 14 years on this topic of empathy and how do we create a more empathic society, and actually a movement for that. And today is our intro cafe to the Empathy Circle process and to the training. And we have our topic today, which is how do we build an empathy movement? And I'm so glad that you're all here to take part in this. So what we want to do is just get started with a quick introduction from everyone, your name, your location, and why you're here. And I'll just model that. Edwin Rutsch from San Francisco Bay Area, a little town called El Cerrito. And I just find that empathy circles are the easiest first step gateway practice for nurturing or building empathy skills. And so I'm just trying to spread this just as widely as possible and really want to get a movement going to, or build on the movement to spread this sort of mindset, empathic way of being as widely as possible. So with that, Larry, do you want to go next and then also call on everyone?
I'm Larry in Florida. I'm a retired occupational therapist, and I just love these empathy circles. I think they're the bee's knees, as they say in Australia. That's me. Thank you. And Jonathan, would you go?
Thank you. I'm a community activist, and I was very heavily involved in politics in Vallejo. And I'm currently in right next to El Cerrito, very close to Edwin. I've watched 3 of the 4 2-hour empathy sessions, and I have already benefited because I forgot how to listen and to reflect. And in my daily, just in the last week, I've reflected on people, what they're saying, and improved communication and benefited. And I feel heard.
And Graham, would you go, please?
Thank you, Larry. My name's Graham. I live in Windsor, which is just south of Detroit in Ontario, Canada. I'm not a Canadian, as you can hear. I've been here roughly 20 years. I participate in these empathy circles, and I've been in them almost 2 years now. And I know the day when I came in is kind of the end of November 2020. So yeah, a bit less than 2 years. But the point is that the skills that you acquire from here are just amazing, and they improve your relationships. They through communication, like Jonathan was saying, and improve your mental framework, and they also help you to learn to understand yourself. And those 2 dimensions, helping you sort of interconnect with other people and connect with yourself, are 2 major outcomes from participating in these empathy circles. So, big stuff. Thank you very much, you guys.
Thank you, Graham. And Kathy, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, Larry, thank you. Kathy Kidd, Houston, Texas. I've been coming for about a year in August. I love what Graham just said. We learn to connect with ourselves and others, and we learn to understand ourselves and others through our listening. That's really beautifully put, so simple and so profound and so deep and so all-encompassing. So that's why I'm here, for the community, to learn to understand myself and others better, to listen better. And I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. And Bill, would you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. My name is Bill Filler. I live in the San Francisco Bay Area, not too far from Jonathan and Edwin. I've been involved with empathy circles for about 4 years now. And I just feel that what these circles reveal about human nature is what's something we've forgotten for a long time, and we've been conditioned to, basically with whatever BS, I'll say that. There's a lot of BS going around. And when you listen to someone, you kind of relax and you really get a chance to see that your fellow human being is actually a partner, not an adversary. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. And Beata, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi everyone, I'm Beata. I'm based in London in the UK. I come accidentally across Empathy Circle on YouTube. I think I was watching an interview with Edwin, and that led me to other videos. And I was so happy to see the community practice exactly what you were sharing. And I'm here because I want to be part of this movement and practice art of listening.
Well, thank you, Beata. And Linda, would you share your introduction, please? Whoops.
I'm Linda, obviously not quite awake yet, from Northern California. I've been coming to the empathy circles for about 2 months. I enjoy it because it's helping me get back and helping me to help others to get back to the basic conversations, people talking, not just texting, but actually sitting down and talking, or talking as you're walking by a front yard or something. And what I'm seeing here helps me broach the subjects without being thought of as a stalker. That's me.
Thank you, Linda. And David, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, I'm David Cohen. I am a social worker here in Des Moines, Iowa. I have not had any involvement at all with empathy circles, although it does sound interesting. I've studied and participated in peacemaking circles in the restorative justice sphere of things, and done some work in the local education system with talking circles with teachers, as well as mediation with students in conflict. And so this is, like I said, this is my first time with this group or organization, and I'm here to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, David.
Valerie, would you introduce yourself, please? Valerie, can you hear me?
You're
The
muted. Yeah,
The famous Zoom quote. Can you hear me now?
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm Valerie, and I am in New Westminster in Canada, and I'm joining Empathy Circle because I really like to engage with other people who enjoy engaging in empathy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Larry, for that. And so we just did the participant introduction. We want to review the some training that we have, and then we'll go into the empathy circle process. So Bill, do you want to give a little overview? And also I'm putting that into the chat, those links. Right.
So this is the empathy training site. You can go here and you can find out a lot of stuff. This is a former cohort. So you can take the training video. I mean, you can look at the training video, and that is a step-by-step explanation of what we do. So you can do that. And the idea is for the empathy movement is to create a global culture based on empathy. Again, we have mutual empathy, openness, and care are our values that the process is rooted in. And we want all 7 or 8 billion people, maybe, I haven't checked my watch, maybe there's 8 billion now, people to be able to take part in empathy circles, or at least really incorporate that into their communication. This is an open source training. That means, I know some of you were talking about, how it doesn't necessarily lend itself to kind of a rapid fire discussion of things like that. But what you can do is you can modify it. You can start with the empathy circle and listening, and then go into other things. And the empathic listening, we believe, really enhances the communication in those, in the rest of the whatever the process is. The donation is it's free to $300. We've gotten very good feedback from participants. A lot of people take the training several times, so if you can donate, that's great. If you can't, that's okay. We want you to learn how to empathize, and that's the point. There's a two, if you were interested in the training, there's a two Empathy Circle prerequisite. This is one of the training cafes that counts as one. It's important for all the people that you will see participating in the training are volunteers. So it's important that if you do commit to the training, you commit to all 5 sessions of 2.5 hours each. That's once a week. Again, the training path is you could take the cohort as many times as possible and then learn to actually produce and put on a training yourself. We don't give college credit at this particular point or CEUs, but we do have a certificate of completion. And we want to build a supportive community. That's the other thing that we do. We have we offer the cohort on Mondays or Saturdays. We've just finished about a month ago a Monday cohort, and the next cohort is on Saturdays that will start on August 6th. And there's a lot more here. You can take a look on the side and really dive in as deep as you would like. All right. Thank you.
And I did put the link into the side there in the chat. It's bestempathytraining.com. You can go check out that site. And if you're interested in taking the training, the next cohort is 12E, starts Saturday, August 6th in this time slot and goes for 5 weeks. So we hope you come and take part in that. And you just need to have taken part in 2 empathy circles, as Bill mentioned. So let's see. Next, we want to just explain how to do. Does anyone need instructions for how to do the empathy circle? Do you feel like you need a little primer, or you're familiar with it, or most people are familiar? Do you need a primer, David? Is that?
Yeah, this is my first time. Okay. So I guess my question is how does this organization or structure conceive of things?
Okay, then the instructions for how to do an empathy circle is I just put it into the chat, but we can review it. This is based on active listening, which is core to pretty much any mediation practice. If you're mediating conflict, you're getting the participants to listen to each other, and it's based on active listening. So we usually divide into smaller groups of 4, maybe 5 in a group. And we have our topic, which is, and I'll put that in to the chat here. How might we build the empathy movement, or whatever's alive for you? So we're going to have 5-minute turns, but I guess we'll divide into 2 breakout rooms. And one person will be the speaker. They will select who they're speaking to. And then you can speak on the topic of, how do we build a movement, or, whatever is on your mind. You can talk about any relationship or just any questions or anything on your mind. You speak a little bit, for about an idea or so, and then you pause and you get a reflection from the listener, and they're going to recap what you said in their own words so that you feel heard and understood to your satisfaction. You check, did they understand it to my satisfaction? If they did, you continue speaking, share a bit more, get another reflection. And if they didn't understand it, you say it again in other words. just so you feel heard and understood, so that your listener really heard you. When the time is up, the timekeeper is going to hold up some symbol, you know, like a time. Let's see, I'll bring that up here. I hold this up, time. Some people might hold up a watch, a time, like Larry's holding, he slowly brings it up. And that's, at that point, you just want to wrap up what you were saying within a sentence or so, get your final reflection. And at that point, the listener becomes the speaker, and they select their listener and they speak to them. We just go around for the time allotted, which is about an hour and 20 minutes or so we'll have for the empathy circle part. And so anyone want to add? Kathy, you want to add any more to that? Oh, they're adding the pause. Remember to pause. If you're the listener and it's like, hey, I can't remember everything the speaker is saying, you can ask for a pause, but that's the only time you sort of interrupt, is asking for that pause. And you may see this sign go up that says, remember to pause if you're going on for quite a while. The facilitator might put that up. So yeah, Kathy, any other?
No, you're the master. I'm not gonna.
Okay,
have
you're
anything
not
else to
gonna.
add.
I'm doing the very abbreviated version here. So I think we should go into 2 circles. So I'm gonna have to create the breakout rooms. So assigned. You want to facilitate one, Kathy?
Sure.
Okay, and I'll put you in. Kathy. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. And Bill, do you want to facilitate the other one? We'll just stay here in this room.
Sure.
And 1, 2, 3. Okay, so didn't set these rooms up.
How long do you want to go?
You're doing 5 minutes?
Yeah, I guess 5 minutes, since there'll be 5 people per room. 2, 3, 4. Okay, here we go. So we'll go till about that's an hour and about 20 minutes, and I'll send a notice, you know, about 10 minutes before. And I think we're set to go into the rooms. And our topic is, how might we build the empathy movement, or whatever is alive for you? And here we go into the rooms. And one room staying here.
Okay, so this is our room. All right. Okay. Well, I don't know, Jonathan or David, you're new. If you feel like being first speaker, or you might feel more comfortable just to see it modeled a little bit. You know, speaking, you just have to speak. Yeah, Jonathan, you ready? You're muted, Jonathan.
Well, thank you. So I'm a blogger on Daily Code.
Okay, I'm going to stop you saying, pick a listener. You can pick,
yes.
Except for David, everyone here knows how to do it.
I'm going to go with Valerie. Hi.
Hi, Jonathan.
And where were you from, Valerie?
In Canada.
Canada.
We
Thank
just
you.
had our Canada Day yesterday, so I'm still wearing my t-shirt, but usually not very national. Happy to
Well,
listen.
Valerie, I'm a blogger, as I said, and I would like to do a article or blog on the Empathy Circle, but I feel that I need to do a bit of research, and I need to view a lot of the pre-recorded ones.
Okay, so you're a blogger and you would like to do an article, a blog on the Empathy Circle. And so that's why you're here. You want to experience it. You want to do a little bit of research, and you're also going to do some viewings of previously recorded empathy circles.
Yes, I feel that you understand what I said. Thank you. And what I'm interested in is bridging the enormous divide between myself as a progressive liberal Democrat and the people in the United States that are a little different than me.
So you're really interested in bridging the divide that you're really experiencing being a progressive liberal Democrat and those who are not in the United States.
That's correct. And so my research requires me to view a lot of the previously recorded material where the group actively engaged people with differing opinions.
So one of your tasks that you're putting yourself through is to review some of the previously reported empathy circles. I think you're referring to the session that Edwin had with the other political candidates, but I'm not sure if you're specifically referring to those.
No, I wasn't, but I will. I think you're understanding me so far. I believe it's the protocol for me to acknowledge that you heard me. We have both inner party discussions. It seemed like Edwin invited a number of the other candidates running, but they didn't appear. Especially the nominee from the party. So empathy circles, to my mind, could be used within the Democratic Party to encourage discussion among all of the people running in the primaries, because so I think that's of value. I also think it's of value to reach out to people who are totally different than us. And I'm hoping to find, by reviewing the videos, some kind of change in the dialogue. I'm also, oh, do you understand?
So you understand that there are some sort of party, sorry, I'm not a very political person, so I don't really know a lot about politics. My language is not really that great when it comes to political speak, but so there's inter-party dialogues that are happening that you believe that Edwin was facilitated. So that part was useful with the other candidates, but one of them did not show, who was running for the party. And then you believe that it is something that ought to be done and has great potential benefit. And that's what
I feel basically you understood what I said. I was making a wide brush, and so I'm kind of merging a number of videos and a number of things going on. But it's the intention is we need to listen and empathize with each other. And I feel understood.
Okay, so
I'm supposed to wait, I guess, to say that.
So you were basically just wanting to emphasize that you were going through sort of more of a wide scope when you were speaking, and that you just think that it would be very valuable to have empathy, because we all need to empathize with each other, and you're very much for it.
Yes. And since I don't have a time card yet, I feel I feel that the simple structure, the fact that there's a simple rule laid down, guidelining the initial immersion where you have the facilitator, you have the designated speaker, you have the listener, and then you have the audience or other participants, and then putting a 5-minute opportunity to speak. It's so refreshing. I remember last week with the participant from India who was talking about students that never had an opportunity to speak uninhibited. It just struck me that, God, how could that poor kid go through life and up to that point and have a revelation, you know, in an empathy circle, that no one had listened to them. And that was the first time. I mean, that was a powerful moment for me.
Okay, so there's time, so I'll just repeat back what you said. You were saying that the method, this particular method, seems very useful in the sense of just how it's structured and how there's 5 minutes to speak. You're taking turns, and so there's a mutual reciprocation in being heard and speaking. And you're sort of a little bit, I don't know if taken back is the right word, but someone was referring to students when they're growing up in school in India that, well, at least this particular person with their perspective was that the students don't get time to be heard. And that was something that really struck you, because you can't imagine going through your entire life not being heard for just even 5 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much. I feel understood.
Okay, I hope so. Thank you, Jonathan. Is there
Let's
something
see,
else?
do I?
Oh, no.
Let's
Now it's my turn to
see,
speak.
do
and I'll
I?
choose a listener. Okay, thank you. Edwin, would you please
Yep, listening.
Okay. So I think I like to view the empathy recordings as well, because my schedule doesn't always fit in to when these are taking place. And so it's always nice to sort of just to listen, to be an active listener, even though I'm not in the group at the time.
Yeah, you also appreciate just listening to empathy circles like Jonathan,
Mhm.
because you
And
don't
so-
always have time to take part, but you enjoy the listening.
Yeah. And so in one of them, and I think in one of our sessions as well, but in one of them, Edwin, you were talking about how often people who are empaths or empathize can be seen as weak, and that you're interested in like remodeling, changing the image of those who empathize to the fact that we're actually very strong people.
So you heard in one of the circles that I was talking about how some people judge empathy as being a weak process, and we should change that to actually say it's very strong, and sounds like that was meaningful to you.
Yeah, so I think that, for instance, one of the factors that really inhibits empathy from growing is this idea that if you empathize, you're weak, or that if you're being empathized with, that you're showing weakness.
You're seeing a sort of a block to spreading empathy, or the empathy movement maybe is that this notion that empathy is weak as listener or as speaker.
Yes, and I think that when we're having relationships with people who are not necessarily open to empathy, that's something to take into consideration.
And just to, when we're talking to people, just to be aware that they may be judging it as a weakness.
I had this experience very recently, and it kind of just was really surprising to me. But I learned a lot from it, just in the sense that there are many different ways to be empathic, and sometimes just pulling back and just seeing the essence of somebody without actively needing to correspond with them in an empathic way is also exercising empathy.
So you're seeing that empathy is a broader understanding that maybe just not even interacting with them, but stepping back and being aware of who they are is an empathic act too.
Yeah, I think that empathizing with people is just a very, sorry, I'm losing my thought because I'm feeling pressure.
Oh, you're feeling a little bit of pressure and you're losing your thought, then you're sort of apologizing for that too.
Yeah. I think ultimately I'm just trying to say that we can empathize in ways that don't end up ignoring the person just because we're not communicating with them. We can still hold empathy in our hearts and just simply not judging them and just embracing the essence of who they are is kind of like, you know, sort of like that's the energy that you hold in this world, and it makes a difference.
So you're seeing that empathy is an energy, sort of a way of being that you are in the world. It's an energy that you hold. And it's not like doing active listening or reflecting or engaging, but it's kind of a way of being that you are.
I think that because in that way you're sort of just allowing people to be and letting them see that for themselves, because we're all so different. Some people like to deep dive into having empathy dialogues, and other people are not accustomed to them. And there's no reason we ought to feel that they are somehow inadequate in some way. They're just different, and it's better to just hold the space. And that's all I have to say.
So you're not wanting to judge people, saying that people are different, and just you want to hold space for everyone. Just
Yeah.
You felt heard?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks. Okay, Bill, can I speak to you?
Sure.
Yeah, I was thinking of, what Jonathan's talking about in terms of, empathy in the political sphere. So I don't know if everybody knows, but I ran for Congress with as empathy being the message. Hey, we need to talk to each other.
So you're reflecting what Jonathan said about empathy in the political sphere, and you ran for Congress and on the empathy platform.
It only got about 3% of the vote. So I think it kind of gives you a sense of, I think it gives you a sense of kind of how many, the percentage of the population that's kind of supportive of it, and only 25% of the people voted. So we're talking about 1% maybe of voters.
So looking at the demographics, it only got 3% of the vote, and then only 25% of the eligible voters voted. So that's 1%. So essentially, you can see where we're starting from as far as
it's a small support. It's like I'm kind of thinking about it. It's like it's given me a lot to think about. It's the same kind of percentage that you and I and others would. When the political left have come to political right have come to Berkeley, and then the political left counteract, there'd be 200 or 300 on the right, 200 or 300 on the left, and they'd be battling it out in the park in Berkeley, and there'd be like 3 or 4 of us in the empathy tent, and that's about the same percentage as kind of voted.
Yeah, so you're relating the numbers to our experience when we go to a protest. There would be 200 or 300 on the left, 200 or 300 on the right, and then it'd be 4 of us saying, "Slow down, let's listen."
Yeah, and when I was in the empathy tent, I always thought maybe there's a silent majority, because people come by the empathy tent and say, "Oh, I love so much what you're doing, but this is too intense for me to be in." And I thought, oh, there might be this larger silent majority out there that really supports empathy. but I'm realizing it's really not much different in terms of percentage that are really supporting this way of being in an intensive way where they'd actually vote for it or stand up for it.
Yeah, so your experience in being out and stuff, a lot of people react very strongly in a positive way to empathy. And so you thought that there might be this kind of silent majority. But actually what you're finding out is that they might like it, but they haven't really kind of taken it to heart to the extent where they're ready to vote for it or act on it in a concrete way.
And there is a video that actually shows the dynamics of the different sides, left, right, battling it out, you know, the Trump phobia, what both sides fear. And there's a link to the video clip. And it shows the conflict out there. It shows us in the empathy tent, bringing the left and right together in the empathy tent. And the parties, after they're in the empathy circle, you know, we're doing an empathy circle, they're actually hugging each other, the left and the right, Antifa and, you know, but it's like everybody's, oh, that's okay, let's go back and fight. There's something, it's almost like an addiction in our culture, I think, to this competition or something. I'm just trying to make sense of it all after, you know, after this election. I'm just still trying to make sense of it.
So you're trying to make sense of people's reaction because there's a movie, Trumpphobia, that looks at the left and the right and the conflict, and also looks at what happens in an empathy circle, the empathy tent at those protests. And you actually have people from the left and the right hugging it, you know, at the end. And you would think that that would make a profound change, but people say, oh, that's nice. Okay, now let's go back to fighting.
Exactly. It's just so weird. And then, you know, I did invite, there was 5 of us running for Congress in this district. 3 of us took part in the empathy circle. The Republican wanted to take part, but scheduling wouldn't let him take, you know, he couldn't make it. And then the establishment candidate who's it has the backing of the Democratic Party, he didn't even respond. It's like, and I kept calling, we did some forums, I kept calling him, I said, will you take part? He just wouldn't answer, just totally wouldn't answer. I asked him 3 or 4 times, to the point where the moderator of the forum was getting on my case for going after the candidate.
Right. So your experience in the political realm was that you were able to get, of the 5 candidates, 2 others to participate in an empathy circle. A third just had a scheduling conflict, but the front runner wouldn't even engage.
Yeah, and he's the Democratic, I mean, he's been in Congress 10 years or whatever. I know it's John Garamendi. He was lieutenant governor, I think, or whatever, of California for a while. So 40 years, you know, and I don't know. And that's why the Democrats, I don't know, I could go on and on. It's like the Democrats have just really failed at the you know, at speaking up for empathy. On one hand, they say, hey, we're for empathy. On the other hand, they don't really stand up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is an example of the power structure within the Democratic Party that looks to, you know, keep the power and not give any other candidate or other voices a view, even though the Democrats present themselves as the big tent party.
Not just a big tent, but the party of empathy.
Oh, the party of empathy too.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I feel heard. Yeah.
Okay, great. David, do you feel ready, or do you need more time to reflect?
Sure. Do you want me to speak or listen?
You would be the listener right now.
Okay, I'll give it a go.
All right, sure. Well, I'm a retired special education teacher, and one of the things that my students were in crisis, and the families were in crisis. So they were in danger of being sent to a residential, you know, facility, taken away from their families, or going to prison, or even to a hospital. I'll stop there.
So you've been working in the education field with kids with disabilities, and there's been issues which give them the possible risk of ending up going into an institution, a care facility, or worse, into a correctional environment.
Right. And we used a team approach based on, actually, one would say empathy, but reflective listening. And it was amazing the effect, the positive effect that had on my students. I'll stop there.
So you were able in your practice to work with the students to try out the empathy approach and active listening, and you had some positive results.
Yes, and one of the things that I noticed, and I wouldn't want to paint all the families with the same brush, but I dealt with many dysfunctional families over time. And the math was, I had the kids for 6.5 hours a day, and the rest of the time they were being, a lot of times, negatively reinforced by the family and their environment. I'll stop there.
So you had some challenges, because even though you were trying to implement this empathetic practices and listening, the students would go back to their families who had challenging interpersonal dynamics, which seemed to undo what progress you may have hoped to make in the classroom.
Right. And although it was difficult, I was surprised that it did not undo the progress. And what that told me is that there is a basic human need for empathy that's much stronger than we understand. I'll stop there.
So you did have the experience, however, that you were able to make progress in the classroom in working with the students to overcome their challenging home environment, and you're very heartened by this.
Yeah, and what I came to my own hypothesis is that, so when you see people acting out badly, it's not that that is inherent in human nature, the savage beast, let's say, but actually we expect empathy, we need empathy, and when we don't get it, we act out. So it is that lack of empathy that creates the acting out and the bad behavior, rather than an inherent characterization of human nature. I'll stop there.
So you've observed that some people feel that some people are intrinsically bad or inherently, prone to act out and have problematic behaviors. But what you've observed instead is that it's actually due to poor interpersonal dynamics, and their these behavioral issues are a function of those environments and the communication problems.
Right. Now, just another analogy I'll make is that there is no, like when we have cold and hot, there is no cold. Cold is just simply the absence of heat. And the same way that with love and hate, there is no hate. Hate is the absence of love. And then I'm done. Thank you.
So you are saying that there's sometimes people have a tendency to reduce things to an all or none type thinking, and you found it useful to reconceive of instead of like love and hate as these diametrical opposites, hatred instead is simply the absence of love.
Thank you, David. I feel fully heard. Okay, now it's your turn to speak. Pick a listener.
Let's see. Who has not been a listener yet?
Jonathan hasn't. He was the first.
Oh, okay. So Jonathan will be the listener, and I can speak on anything.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've been in the social work field for a number of years, and I went back a few years ago to pick up my master's degree, and you know, it kind of opened my eyes into a lot of our social structures and the beliefs that are behind them. And as I was kind of getting into things, I learned that you know, people have a tendency to, you know, view themselves and each other as bad, and so we need to, like, there's a sense that we need to overcome the bad.
While you were studying for in school, studying in your advanced degree work, you came across, or you become exposed to the idea that people carry around an initial expectation of people being bad, and rather than being open-minded.
Yes, and so while this may be, you know, a projection of their inner value judgment against themselves projected onto others that they are bad, I am of the opinion that we need to adopt a more "I'm okay, you're okay" type of approach, and hopefully more people, in my opinion, will see the light into having more participatory social institutions or ways of organizing and living in society.
I sense that you're looking for some institutional form of validating a common attitude or a commonly accepted community value that we are all okay initially, and that we don't bring these preconceptions to the table.
Yes, I do feel heard there. So I've been studying and exploring, you know, alternative, you know, social structures, as I think that our current ones are based on these adversarial judgmental modes. And so this kind of spurns my curiosity. And as you guys are talking about your frustrations with the Democratic and Republican, you know, two-party system, I am not surprised at the you know, the frustration that you've been experiencing.
Tacitly or without saying, you're painting a broad brush of current methods of communication which don't convey empathy and allow for the building and lifting up of humanity.
Right.
You're looking for something new.
Right. Yeah, I am speaking in very general terms. You know, it's easy to get lost in the weeds, so to speak. So anyway, I think that the mode for social change starts from within, starts with the individual, and so I'm kind of taking myself on as patient zero, and you know, trying my best to you know, live and embody the values that I see as important.
You're trying to internalize a new method of communication. You're exploring for a new method of communication, and you're hoping that it becomes embodied in you and transforms you.
Yeah, and so one piece is the communication, and the other piece is you know, kind of working on some of the values that underpin this, because I think that both within myself and within others, you know, we do have values or attitudes or beliefs which which unknowingly can run contrary to empathizing with others and having empathetic communication.
You're saying that based upon your study in university, that you perceive undercurrents of values, which you're hoping that this new training will allow you to address or more effectively work with.
Fair enough. Thank you. I feel heard.
Well, you're welcome. Let's see, what's next?
Oh, so Jonathan, you're the speaker. Everybody's really had a chance, and we keep going around and just pick another listener.
Oh
And
gosh, I get 5 minutes.
you get 5 minutes. That's right.
Okay. Well, thank you. What came up last week?
Okay, pick a listener though, just so.
Pick a listener.
Yeah.
Well, how about you?
That's fine. I'm listening. Go ahead.
Okay. Last week, the time issue was brought up, and this whole phenomenon is moving so much slower than the pace of messages, of the blog I'm on, television. When I walk out of here, I go back to my job, and it's got to be part of it. I told a friend yesterday that I was doing this, and that my friend actually went on and looked at some of the videos and remarked at how slow things moved. And I told him, I said, hey, you have to embrace the whole phenomenon. You have to commit or sacrifice or make one available to get through the video, let alone start empathizing.
So you were talking about a friend, and the time issue came up. And what you see in contrast to the speed of communication at work or in a blog or any kind of normal conversation is that this goes really slow. This is what your friend said. It's really slow. And you made the point that you need to kind of embrace the whole experience, tolerate the slowness, quote unquote, to really understand what's going on.
Yes, and I'd have to go back to the reference video, but the gentleman speaking made a point about the time issue that struck me and helped me just slow down a little. I guess good things in life come from slow things.
Yeah. So you had seen a video where somebody talked about that issue, and you're finding that slow is not necessarily bad, and that it can bring out, I guess, hidden features that you wouldn't see or notice otherwise.
That's correct. I'm intrigued by our guest, David, talking about preconceptions and people bringing values to the table. And as I mentioned previously today, I'm really waiting to schedule time to review far more of the videos in the archives or on YouTube. What I'm interested in finding out is if there's a vocabulary or conceptual change in the attitude of people over the time of the 2 hour, hour and a half interaction.
Right. So you are interested in sort of the effects and analyzing the effects and what's happening to the participants, allowing for this kind of different kind of pace of communication. And so you would like to see something, if you could measure scientifically, I assume, the difference in attitude, 2 hour, before the empathy circle starts, and then after the 2 hours, how people feel. And you broke up a little bit. I might have missed something, so please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I'm just speaking generally. I feel you heard what I said.
Okay, good. Continue.
It resonates with what Edwin said about his, I guess, disappointment that everyone in the tent for 1 hour became best friends, but the effect did not seem to be permanent. It seemed like, well, they left the tent and now we're going to just revert back to normal.
Yeah, so you're relating as the fact, what really constitutes kind of like a permanent or more long-lasting change. You talked about the people in the tent who then were on opposite sides politically, came together kind of in peace and harmony, and then went, left the tent and everything went back to the way it was. So that's the kind of problem you're considering.
That's correct. What I'm interested in, as time permits, is really focusing and looking at some of these past videos to try to determine the language being used and whether there's a shift in language and discussion. Reflection, as we're doing, I can reflect what I literally hear you see, or I can reflect metaphorically what I'm hearing you say. I can reflect bringing my own fantasies and science fiction. In other words, these dialogues should be fascinating. They should reveal a lot of what people are thinking and how they're interacting.
So in analyzing the videos and going back, what you're looking for is a shift in language and a qualitative shift. So the examples you gave is you can give, repeat the exact words, you can kind of infer, you can look for underlying needs and wants. And so you're kind of looking to see what kind of shift this might make. And you're thinking that this might lead or should lead to a fascinating sort of dialogue, if slower.
Yes, I feel heard. And I'm.
You can finish your last thought. Go ahead.
And thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. It was good listening. All right. All right, Valerie. Fire up those ears. Okay. So it's interesting what Jonathan said. I've told the story several times, so I apologize to Edwin and you, Valerie, if you've heard it before. But I just find it very, very instructive. So this is a story about Einstein and shaving cream. I'll stop there.
Okay, so you just want to apologize ahead of time to Edwin and myself because you shared this story before, but it's really important when you would like to share it again. And it's about Einstein and shaving cream.
Right. And so this was a man, he was then in the 50s, but he was a friend of Einstein when he was a child. And so Einstein used to come down every morning and complain about how much he hated shaving. I'll stop there.
So there was this man who was a friend of Einstein's who was around 50 years old. And in the morning, Einstein would come downstairs and just share how much he really didn't like shaving.
Right. So for Christmas, he bought him a can of shaving cream. And so Einstein came down and he was like, oh, this is the greatest thing since, I don't know, E equals MC squared. He loved the shaving cream. And then he used the shaving cream and he used the can up and he never bought another can as long as he lived. And that's the story.
So the man had bought Einstein a can of shaving cream, and Einstein would come down and be like, oh yeah, this is great. This is amazing. I just love it. And he'd use it and use it and use it and use the whole entire can up, but then he never ever used shaving cream ever again after that.
Right. And I see the analogy with sort of empathy, that people, say it and then they kind of compartmentalize it and then they go back to their lives. And so we're looking to build an empathy movement, a way to really have people incorporate empathic thinking into their everyday life. And I'll stop there.
So you're seeing the analogy there with what Edwin was sort of referring to earlier, which is just that people will revert back they will sort of practice something in sort of like in mutuality with someone else. But then after that's kind of over, then they just go back to the same old familiar.
Right. And responding, I'm kind of shift a little bit here to what Jonathan said about the shift in language. You might actually see that. But depending upon where each individual is, I've been criticized because I'm quote unquote parroting people, but I've also been criticized because I infer too much. So each individual brings their own wants and needs as to being heard. I'll stop there.
So you just wanted to speak on what Jonathan was talking about in terms of looking for language and any changes in language and expression. And you wanted to point out that because there is a lot of diversity with people and just where they're at in the process or their own sort of style, that that's a variance to sort of take into consideration, because some people will really prefer the word for word parroting, like exactly the words I use, exactly the way I said it, and other people really like being reflected in a way that is not really what they said or close to what they said, but it helps them to process what they actually said. So there's a lot of variety in terms of like how people might end up using language.
Right. And what I found is the commonality is that once you shift, once you don't criticize them or just, say, oh, you want me to do word for word, or you want me to kind of infer more, and then you make that shift based upon their request, that is the key. In other words, they really feel heard. Doesn't make a difference what you do so much as honoring and showing that you're trying to honor their request.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like what you're saying is that there sometimes might be this sort of battle that happens in communication that is in this method that is doesn't take place if you just honor what the person is requesting that they need in order to be heard. So there's a real shift that happens if someone asks to be very sort of specific recitation of what they said, that instead of sort of judging or defending or any kind of reaction, you just say, okay, sure. And you just go ahead and do that. And then that really makes a lot of difference just in terms of how they feel heard.
Thank you, Valerie. I feel fully heard. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. I just wanted to go back to Edwin.
Okay, listening.
Okay. So this is kind of all over the place as I've been listening to everybody. I just wanted to make a few points.
Okay, you've got ideas. Sounds like they're all over, but you want to make a few points.
Yeah. So just in terms of what you were saying, Edwin, about the candidate that never even responded, that's something I've actually noticed happening here in Canada more and more. Whereas if people don't want to deal with something, they'll just ignore. And even like professional people. So that doesn't surprise me that candidate did that at all.
So that quality of just ignoring people if you don't want to deal with them is something you're seeing sort of even spreading in Canada, even among professional people. So you're not surprised that happened.
Yeah, and I think for me, professionalism really just is about upholding a standard, sort of like what Bill was talking about, where you just accommodate. There's no need to get defensive or create animosity. It's just about how can we accommodate this sort of relationship. And I think in the professionals, to me, that's what professionalism is. It's a standard that if we don't have that, then what else? Where's the standard? We don't have one then.
So for you, professionalism is just a certain standard of how you accommodate or maybe communicate with people. And if you don't have that standard, then what do you have?
Mm-hmm. Just because in terms of what we consider professionalism this is how we do business in the world. This is how we exchange. This is how people who don't know each other interact. And so professionalism is very, very important in my mind to maintain that standard. because this is where we access resources. This is where we get our needs met in a lot of ways that otherwise we would just stay at home and we wouldn't need all the goods and services that are out there that we are interacting with like just all the time every day.
So professionalism, you see, is being very important because it's how we really run the society and get our needs met and run the systems. And so you're maybe concerned that if we don't have that sort of that norm, those standards, that things aren't going to work as well.
Yeah, and I think somewhere along the lines, I guess it almost feels like the up and coming generation sort of resented the sort of the professional standards of like the previous generation, and which, by the way, I don't believe in generations anyways, but it's a whole other thing. But I think that it's yeah, I think something got lost there in the transition in terms of like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And it almost feels like there's this saying with the Queen in England. I don't know how much attention you guys pay in the United States, but anyways, there's this saying that says that the Queen never complains and never explains.
Yeah, so you're seeing that maybe there's this standard, is this professionalism, and maybe the newer generation is sort of rebelling against some things, but they're maybe throwing out professionalism too, like the baby with the bathwater. And so maybe some concerns about that, and something about the Queen, that
The Queen of England.
the Queen of England, something about, I didn't quite
never
catch that.
never complain, never explain. And it feels like that's what a lot of people have adopted, this sort of attitude of just like, I'm not gonna respond, and I'm just gonna be sort of the highbrow, like, I don't need to respond to that. I'm sort of, I'm in my moat. I've got my moat around me. I don't need to respond to anybody. It seems like we've sort of become that sort of that gap, between people.
Yeah, so the Queen, so it has that distance from the people. Like, I'm not even going to bother responding to you. I'm sort of above it all. And that value you see is sort of creeping into the culture in general. People are just like, hey, I don't even need to respond to you.
Yeah, and I think that in that case, in this term, keeping in lines with well, I mean, you don't have to be a quote unquote academic learned person to be a professional person, but I'm finding that those who are, it's so remarkable to me that you can go through university, you can go through master's, you can go through PhD and still turn out really dysfunctional. They don't teach you how.
Yeah, so you're just saying that academia, going through all this, doesn't really teach relational skills. You can still come out sort of relationally dysfunctional.
And I think, okay, just one last sentence is that I think as a result of all this, people are really living in a kind of survival mode. And so their reality is skewed, because when we're coming from a place of survival, it's too overwhelming to deal with things around us. And yeah, I have a whole lot more to say, but I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe one of the problems is people are in this survival mode. When everything becomes too overwhelming for them, maybe they pull in, and you have a lot to say about it, but next time.
Thank you, Edwin. I feel fully heard.
Then David, can I speak to you?
Please.
Yeah, so I was, just that what Valerie was saying about just not responding. I try to respond to everyone, even to say, hey, I'm pretty busy, I can't deal, with this, and just some kind of response, I just think is just positive in some way. Yeah.
So in your travels, when you're interacting with people, you no matter how the conversation is going, you do respond to them. It's a value of yours.
Yeah, and so then moving on, also I'm just thinking about conflict, that the empathy circle it's a really great tool for dealing with conflict. I mean, there's a typical restorative justice stuff, which is the talking circle, you pass the stuff around and I think that the empathy circle is actually more effective than that, because people have to really hear each other and reflect. So this process is very good for, doing that restorative practices.
So you found that you kind of looked at the different models of, circles and empathy circles more specifically, and you found that this approach has been more effective in helping people work through the conflict.
And one is you learn the practice, you learn how to listen. Like with a talking stick, you don't necessarily have to really, you hear it, but you don't have to really take it in as deeply. So by having to reflect something, you have to take it in more deeply.
So you find that this reflective structure really, kind of makes the participants have to actively listen and understand one another in a way that just a simple talking circle doesn't.
Yeah, because I'm kind of talking about this because I'm kind of building on what just you talked about restorative practices. And I think another thing with restorative justice work is that it's sort of restoring the status quo to a large extent. And we do restorative empathy circles, which is we're saying that we want an empathic culture. You create the context like, hey, we want an empathic relationship and culture. And if there's a conflict, we want to, that means there's a rupture in the empathic connection. We want to restore that. Whereas restorative justice is a lot like, hey, we have the status quo, we got a rupture, and we want to restore the status quo, but they don't say what the status quo is, right?
So you're finding there's a limitation in the way that restorative justice is conceived, because at best all it can do is return the participants to the previous status quo, and you'd like to work with people to move beyond that.
Yeah, and creating a new status quo, which is a culture of empathy, that the whole systems and structures are more empathic, from the ground up. I mean, from the schools, from the prisons, to the way the politics is run. It needs to be, basically people need to listen to each other. It kind of comes down to that. There's sort of this lack of listening, and it's putting listening kind of up front and center.
So you'd like to see a greater culture of empathy and listening, and you see that as having a much more beneficial impact on people's lives.
And I'd love to have Jonathan bring in some, really polarized people into some empathy circles. The more polarized, the better. Bring some, Proud Boys and some, woke, social justice warriors together. We'd love to bring those different people together in an empathy circle.
So you'd like to see some of this brought into practice by John, bringing in people from different ends of the political spectrum to engage with one another.
Yeah,
and empathy circle.
And I've done a circle on I call it empathizing with racism, right? So I did a discussion with Daryl Davis. I don't know if anybody knows Daryl Davis, but he's done all kinds of work, around bridging the divides with the KKK and actually transforming people through, basically through listening and befriending them. And so anyway, there's a lot of things we can apply this to.
So you've had some you've been impressed with Daryl Davis and listening to people with extreme positions such as card-carrying racists, and the practice of empathy can be really transformative for even people with those extreme positions.
And I have done an interview with them, recorded interview on this topic. So I'll just end with that and feel fully heard. Yep.
All right. And you did an interview with him, and so you're happy about that.
Okay, David.
Okay, so for this second round, has everybody had a chance to listen? Okay, so let's see. I guess I'll just draw a name out of the hat. Valerie, would you be comfortable being a listener?
I'd be very happy to listen, David.
All right. Not really sure where to go with this conversation. It's interesting to kind of join a new group like this and kind of hear the different ideas and perspectives.
You're not really sure exactly where to go next with this conversation, but you're finding it very interesting to be part of this new group and seeing how it all works.
I will just offer a little tidbit that I was previously involved, not for a long time, but with a group called Better Angels. Now they're calling themselves Braver Angels, and they actually did trainings on working with people from different sides of the political spectrum, and engaging with one another in conversation.
So you used to be part of a group called Better Angels, who have now renamed themselves to Braver Angels. And their work is to help to divide differences between people who are on extreme opposite ends.
Yes, and during their trainings, they had a number of principles that they would teach people as they're trying to engage one another to kind of so some of those principles were, don't feel like you need to convert somebody. You're just there to listen and speak, and so that's one helpful attitude to bring into a conversation.
So they had various trainings. One of the principles they taught was that when you're talking with someone, to make sure that you're not sort of trying to convert them.
Yes, and that's things that can sort of keep your ego out of the conversation, and learn to keep your focus on appreciating the other person can be helpful, and basically reduce the defensiveness that can come up and cause conflict.
So just keeping your ego out of it and being aware of that can substantially reduce potential conflict.
Yes, and another exercise they did was just as a practice to pick a political topic, and then with your listening partner, actually take the devil's advocate, take the opposite position that you normally would, and so that kind of helped you kind of think things out from the other side.
So one of the other exercises they did was to take, like, there would be different sides, and then so whoever was on one side would take the opposite side and I guess sort of speak on that or argue for that, just to get a perspective on, like, sort of putting yourself in someone else's shoes. Yeah,
that's right. So I found that very interesting, and they had retreats actually where people would go. They would gather people, like a certain number of people from the left and the right, and they would go for like a weekend retreat, and it wouldn't just be people of political differences, but people of different religions and different walks of life, so socioeconomics and different ethnicities, and so because they kind of went and spent a significant time around other people, it was they reported that it had a greater impact in kind of transforming the people as they're building more significant relationships with people that are different from them.
That's really interesting. So you're mentioning that they did these retreats, and what they would do is invite people from diverse backgrounds intentionally, so that they could spend time together beyond a conversation. And what was found is that they actually established more meaningful connections with these people with diverse backgrounds.
Yes, and that concludes this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Okay, Jonathan?
Am I speaking or listening?
You'd be listening.
I'm listening. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to continue on with the sort of survival mode that people are seeing as their reality that I was mentioning earlier.
So you're carrying on from your previous observation that you see people around you less gracious and in some kind of survival mode.
Mm-hmm. And when we're in survival mode, whatever we're dealing with, that becomes our reality, becomes imminent. That's what we have to deal with. And so all these sort of nice things that go on are not as eager. They're not as important because we're not threatened by them. So we deal with those things we're threatened by. And I also think it has very much to do with like our physiology and our habitualization, all of that sort of stuff. But I think a lot of it is just sort of this kind of lack of sort of like pulling ourselves back and seeing that what we think is reality is really just a reaction to threats that are constructed.
So in trying to look a little deeper and analyze what you're feeling, you're saying that it's environmental, it's going on around you, and that a lot of people that you know are a bit in a crisis, and that they feel they have to prioritize paying the rent or dealing with a child or whatever. And so they're acting out of trying to solve a direct threat rather than taking a deep breath and enjoying the day.
Yeah, and I think it's a little bit more than that as well. I mean, there's sort of real survival that, you know, the paying the rent and so forth. But when it comes to like our political agendas and how we want to shape the nation, so to speak, that I think that people are just under this cloud of general threat that is not immediate, right? It's not like I have to feed my baby in an hour or they're going to start crying. It's not an immediate threat. It's just a sense of constant threat that we have to attend to in order to like mitigate the imagined consequences if we don't deal with it.
You're saying that in general, the people you're running into are living under immediate threat and are distracted.
Are not dealing with immediate threat. It's more of a chronic, imagined societal threat that they imagine that they need to attend to. Sorry, they attend to because they imagine that there's going to be these consequences. But it ends up sort of being a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So you're saying that people are just whipping themselves up into this imagined, and I'm using the word deliberately, imagined, they feel threatened and it affects their behavior. But you're saying that perhaps it isn't as bad as they think, and that they're just off in some imaginary fantasy of some sort.
Well, yes, because I mean, if you're experiencing empathy, for instance, what Edwin was talking about, you go to the tent, you experience empathy, and then you go back to business as usual. It's not that that empathy experience that you had isn't real, right? It is also real, but it's that your attention and your focus then ends up being, instead of on the non-threat, which is the empathy, on the imagined threat of something happening in the future that you have to attend to, because it's like just a river of blood that you constantly have to mop up, and it's not real. There's no blood. It's just ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy because we imagine that that's what we have to attend to, and so we end up just kind of like creating that constant attention focus experience to this like imagined scenarios that end up playing out. But it's because we're the ones that are like attending to it with our attention focused time, energy, everything, instead of empathy.
So it's your observation time. So you're saying that people around you are caught up dealing with emergencies, which you're saying that are not necessarily emergencies, and that they should take a deep breath and be more empathetic. Maybe.
Yeah. I feel fully heard. I had so much more to say. And then it's
I
like,
know.
okay, thank you.
So, okay, so do I get to be, do I pick a listener now? Yeah, okay, thumbs up. Okay, David, I'd like you to listen. Okay, well, there's just so much I could talk about, but I want to tell you how valuable it was hearing about the use of the empathy circle with kids in trouble. The restorative justice issue was fascinating. There was discussion about well, of course, the lady from India last week who was talking about working with her kids. Can you reflect that?
So you were heartened by what you learned about kids doing the empathy circles in the restorative justice context, and also with a woman from India doing this?
Yes. And I feel I've learned a lot just in the few empathy circles which I've attended, and tying it in with critical race theory, which is also an interesting tangent. In my study, I'm studying a book called Tacit Racism, which looks at the structural components of racism and identifies 5 areas of concern. One of them being a cultural concern about categories and about how people bring to the table, these are your preconceptions. I think it was you talking about preconceptions. Somebody, you're shaking your head, yes. In that a lot of my communication in the past had been blocked by my wanting to put people into categories. In other words, I walk in to the room and it's like I'm looking, okay, now what is this guy? Is he a Republican, a Democrat, a spaceman, a snowman? In other words, I'm trying to categorize them. And what I'm learning from my studies about tacit racism is to kind of let go and be more situational. And it's almost like they're saying, but they're not using the right words, being more empathetic. In other words, stop trying to put somebody in a category, just listen to them, reflect.
Okay, so you've learned a lot about participating with empathy circles, and you've also studied critical race theory, and it's given you some knowledge about how racism can work in society, different aspects, including cultural. And one of the things that you've been taken by is people's tendency to put each other into categories or boxes, and that tendency to categorize other people is having these racist effects.
Yes, that's correct.
Maybe more that you said, but my memory is not 100%.
We'll push the pause button. You can ask me to pause. So focusing down on a different topic, I think everyone should know that the race, the congressional race that Edwin was in, was a little different because of redistricting. And John Garamendi's turf was Solano County, upwards more towards the coast. And then through redistricting, they took away his coastal influence and gave him, for whatever reason, part of Contra Costa County and El Cerrito. And so that's one of the reasons. Another reason why I reached out to the Empathy Circle, or I'm here today, was to just get a little bit into politics, not in depth, but I'm seeing as now. Edwin mentioned to me. Okay, well, let's reflect on that.
So switching gears, you found
10 minutes.
You looked at Edwin's experience in running for office, and you noticed the impact of the redistricting that it had on the political race, and you made another point, but it exceeds my memory buffer.
That's fair. I'll make one last point and defer, so we might have another person who can participate. People in El Cerrito need to be talking to people in Vallejo, and there seems to be, we've got like two little islands, and we're all supposed to be voting for one congressman.
So people in these different areas are not talking to one another, and yet they're in the same district voting on the congressman in the same race. Empathy circles could have something to say about it.
One would hope, and I feel heard. Thank you.
Yes.
Let's see. So I was speaking, so no, you picked the listener.
Bill?
Listening.
Okay. Okay, so round three.
Mhm.
Yeah, what to talk about? So I guess I'm kind of curious as to the curriculum for the empathy circles, and certainly I'm getting a good drill on this active listening and kind of parroting back what the other person says.
So you're interested in the curriculum for the Empathy Circle, and I am for the training, or more generally, and so you're getting a sense of it in the cafe, at least the experience.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me of I studied logical fallacies in the past, and a lot of times people, when they're engaging in a debate, they'll do what's called it's a little bit of a dirty trick, that they'll do what's called a straw man, which is painting the other person's position in the worst possible light so that you can knock it down more easily.
Mhm. So you're talking about debate tactics, and you're talking about logical fallacy. And an example of that was what's called the straw man, which is to basically paint the other person's point of view in the worst possible light and then knock that down rather than their actual position.
Right, right. Whereas this empathy approach might be a good example of the steel man, which is the opposite, where you're reflecting the other person's position, and if you're going to embellish on it, you're actually going to spin it in the more positive direction.
Mhm. So you're contrasting that with what we're doing here, which you characterize as a steel man, which means that as you kind of reflect and then possibly embellish the other person's whatever they're saying, it actually enhances their position rather than degrades it.
Right. So obviously it's going to have a better impact on the respect and emotional experience that the people are going to have in the conversation, and so it makes me wonder why people aren't doing this already. This is stuff that a lot of these communication skills we've learned in grade school.
Right. So you were saying that that seems to be a much more functional way, a better way to build community. And so you're wondering why people aren't doing this particular kind of dialogue more. And it's something that we were supposedly taught in elementary school.
I mean, we of course, different people have different experiences, but I think as we're going about our lives, we're emphasizing competition. There's like an old notion, I guess, from the culture that the way that we're going to move forward is by beating down the other party rather than figuring out ways to better cooperate.
Yeah, so you're talking about the sort of zero-sum game, where essentially I'm only enhance my position by taking something away from you or vice versa, which is really not a very functional model of human interaction.
Yes, and I'll kind of tie it back to what I said at the beginning of the conversation, which is, in our daily lives, are there ways that we can organize our living experience, our social structures, our relationships based on cooperation rather than competition?
So you're seeing that a basic reorganization of our concept or kind of the relation to society would be more functional if it was based on cooperation rather than competition.
And so I find myself wanting to de-invest from competitive systems like voting, and so I try to convince both, or at least talk about both the Democrats and Republicans about that there's got to be another way to living in society than through these zero-sum games.
Right. So you were looking in your own personal life to, as you characterized it, to de-invest in the competition model. And you gave an example of voting, and then trying to reach out to both Democrats and Republicans or people of all political stripes and try to engage them in a more functional model based on cooperation.
Yeah. And so maybe there's alternative, very highly locally based social institutions that are more participatory. Restorative justice would be one. There's you can very effectively use community groups to get local needs met in the neighborhood.
So you're talking about more cooperative, basically organizations, and that occurs on the local level. in order to get things done in the neighborhood or something like that. Restorative justice or circles is another example you gave.
Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay.
We just have like a minute or so. Do you want to do any kind of debrief or anything, Bill? Or go to the full group.
Yeah, whole group. Sure. Let's. Does anybody have any questions or?
I put the link in there to the mediation. I'd meant the video if you want to take a look at that. And I think Valerie had posted the Daryl Davis interview too.
I also posted, Jonathan, you just because you mentioned about race, I just was linking some stuff out about racism. A guy named Alan Johnson, he's done great work, and I've read his book and studied.
Thank you. I assume if I leave my window open, I can get those links and chats or links from the chat.
If you next to it says to everyone, or you can, there's 3 little buttons next to the smiley face. Yeah. And you can do a save chat and it'll save it to your hard drive too.
I'll try. What happened? Okay. Smiley faces.
Yeah, down where you type where.
Oh, if you open the chat window, to the side.
Okay. Oh, okay. You got a chat window, the smiley face and more.
Yeah.
Save chat.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
And then it says show in Finder. You might want to show it in Finder. Otherwise, it kind of can get lost.
I found it.
Yeah.
Okay. It's thank you. I don't Zoom much.
Well, this has been great. Really appreciate everyone taking part. We'll have a minute to debrief, or the other group will be joining us in a minute. So,
Edwin, I'll send you an email.
Great. Yeah, love to connect.
Edwin did mention something about an empathy marathon for eight hours.
Yeah.
Kind of a retreat.
Are you up for that? We could do it on a Saturday. This could be part of it, but we start maybe a little earlier. We go into this circle and then we just continue on for another 6 hours or something.
I think that'd be a very interesting challenge. People could pop in and out because obviously you might have to eat.
Yeah, you could take a pause, I guess. I wonder what it would do for everyone, what the effect would be. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to post it here. If you want to take we'll just go around and take a minute to share what will you be doing over the next weeks or whatever to build the empathy movement, or just any sort of feedback about the circle. Larry, do you want to just call on people?
Bill, would you like to share?
Sure. Well, I do Thursday empathy in schools. I think that this should be part of all students' competencies, and they should learn how to listen and reflect accurately. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm also actively participating and co-leading the cohort. Thanks.
The training cohort. Yeah.
Right.
Can you put that link in the
Yes, I will. Yes.
Thank you, Bill. And David, would you share, please?
So this was my first time in the group, and so just learning how to just the basics of the model, the active listening, and kind of speaking back to the other people. And it was interesting just to hear people's experiences of the content of the conversation itself.
Thank you, David. And Beata, would you share, please?
I would like to be present in my listening to myself and to other people this week.
Thank you, Beata. And Valerie, would you share, please?
Same thing. I am going to be practicing empathy just in all of my communications and just trying to glean more of an understanding about it and having an open mind about what it actually means to be empathic.
Thank you, Valerie. And Jonathan, would you share, please?
I'm going to be viewing, at least try to view 2 or 3 of the videos in the archives, some of the more contentious ones, if I can find them. I mean, contentious in the sense that the people involved were differing on the topic. And I appreciated today's opportunity to be here. And I think I'll come back next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Graham, would you share, please?
I've really enjoyed today. There were 2 threads that I really resonated with. And one was all this thing about our place in the world. And this offers us an experience of finding out what our place in the world is. And the second thread is a variation on that by Kathy, who wants to use this space or finds this space nice because, or comfortable because she can say her piece and let it be. My commitment is to seek out some empathy buddies for this week, a couple of empathy buddies. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Graham. And Kathy, would you share, please?
Yeah, yeah, it was a beautiful circle. And one thing I like about the circle is you can share without anybody giving you feedback, right? You just get to say what you need to say and there's no judgment. And it's just, you know, it's like very peaceful knowing you can share what needs to be shared and nobody has any responsibility to do anything about it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. And Linda, would you share, please?
I agree with Kathy. It's very nice to be able to talk and be not judged or anybody jumping in with questions, or you can speak your mind and then get something off your mind and there's over and done with, and you can move on with the rest of your things. This week, I'm going to work on being in my front yard, watering or whatever, when people are walking by with their dogs and stuff, and start conversations, even if it just starts with, hi, hello. My goal is that in a week or 2, I can add a couple extra chairs out there and people will be sitting down and we'll be conversating. I think that's a lost art, and that's the way to start with the empathies. We have to be talking to people. Empathy circles don't work if you're just texting. So that's my goal, to be out front, because the weather's cooler now. Don't expect me out there in the 100 degrees, but I can do this week.
Thank you, Linda. And
I think David is outstanding, Larry.
David, did I call on you? Did I call on you, David?
Yeah, I just spoke on just my impressions about the meeting today.
Okay.
You know, I don't really have a lot to say thinking forward, but just I'm doing the best I can.
Thank you again, David. Thank you. Yeah, what a beautiful circle. I love these empathy circles. I've never seen anything so relatively simple and yet so profoundly effective in human beings getting in touch with what's alive inside of us. Really, that's such a beautiful thing. And I love you all. I think that I'm going to keep coming back. You're going to keep seeing me around, and I don't know if you can get rid of me. So back to you, Edwin.
Yeah, and you're also holding the Friday Empathy Cafe too, kind of on the same topic. So we have one on Monday that Bill is holding and then Bill is holding the Thursday Empathy Cafe for Empathy in the Schools topic, and then you're doing the Friday, and then we have this Saturday one. And I'll put that into some links to if there's a feedback form, if you can click on that, just open that and add your name and email and info, just sort of a debrief about your experience today. And then we can also add you to the email list. And then there's the link to the training cohort that starts August 6th. And invite you, if you're on LinkedIn, to invite friends to the LinkedIn event for this event. It just really helps us get the word out to more people. So for me, I'm focusing on developing a training, a 6-week defining empathy training. So there'll be a new training. That'll be a module 2. So that's kind of what my focus is at the moment, and also been bringing people in to take part in the training. So that's my projects for the coming couple of months, actually. So with that, I think that's it. Anything else, Bill, or I think we pretty much got it covered. So yeah, see you next week. Check out the link to all the other. Is that a goodbye, Graham, or did you want to say something?
Kind of a goodbye now.
Oh, goodbye. Okay, we like to end with our jazz hands, so just say goodbye with our jazz hands, and see you next time. Real pleasure.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.